Okay, before we actually get into using the equalizer, we're going to look at a little more advanced technique here. Here's the bass part doing the solo, right here. As you can see, what we're talking about as far as dynamics go, it's definitely not even. Each note has a different volume, and the range or the dynamics between the loudest peak and perhaps the quietest one, or here's the quietest one, it's pretty broad. That's too broad. This is what creates problems in reproduction. This could potentially create a considerable problem on small speakers, on a boombox, car stereo, or even being played over the radio. There's a couple ways to deal with this. We put a compressor on it, but we don't want to overcompress. So we're going to actually get inside the waveforms of that track and restructure them. Let's take a look at that. Now let me make this a little larger so you can really see what we're doing. Okay, here's the entire bass part. We're going to take the scissors. You can do this on almost any program. I'm actually going to make some cuts. Normally I would work on a huge screen here and get right in there, but for sake of video, we're going to do it this way. I recommend when you're working with cutting wave forms, wave parts, is actually make them as big as possible so you can really get into doing exactly that. We're going to cut these sections. And what we're going to do is even them out by hand. Compressors are nice, but they're not humans. They can't conceive of things like we can in order to reproduce musically. This is going to make an immense difference and is a very powerful tool. They don't have to be exact, but they should be, close, which they were not. So now as this hits the compressor is going to be much more capable of dealing with the part. And what we probably should do is actually bring them up a little more even, because we have to be aware of the part before it and the part after it. I'm going to make sure that as the sections progress, it still sounds natural. Now, we're dramatically improving the playing. Don't tell the bass player. Let him think he did it. Let's have a listen to that. Man, that's already better. Now we can bring that up in the mix and it's going to be more even. We're not going to have any peak out problems because everything's been evened out. Dramatically improved. Now, once again, coming through, we're going to go back to the compressor, add a little bit more, and then bring up some of the frequencies with an equalizer to make it even fill in that lower area better. Whoop. Okay, a little higher ratio, longer release time. And if you're hearing distortion, that's just because we're going through multiple sound cards to make video live like this. Okay, now let's get to the EQ. Turn it down a little bit so we don't make it distort. Now, I'm going to make a point to let you know we're looking at the lower mid-range area first before we get into the low lows. And the reason is that's what's going to reproduce better on small systems. Now, I'm going to allow that distortion to stay in here as a reference point because, once again, he's a 6-string bass and he's so low in frequencies that that's creating a problem right there. So, in order to deal with that, we're rolling off very low and boosting in the mid-range, lower mid-range area. We're not touching anything else at this point. We're starting with that. Let's take a listen. Okay, now let's hear it with the solo. That's better. Once again, we have a long release time on this. We lowered the threshold settings so more of the signal is going into the compressor and being compressed, and brought up the ratio a bit. Still isn't that high, but we'll stick with that for now. Now, let's bring in the keyboard for a second, since it's such a prevalent part.